Hey there! Before you're about to dive into one of the episodes for our maternal mental health series, make sure that you have subscribed to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, we would appreciate if you spread the word and recommend or even forward this episode or the whole podcast in general to another parent or to anyone who you think should be listening to this. If you find yourself asking how you can support us, the easiest way to do this is to give us a follow on Instagram at Stand Parenting Podcast and to rate us with 5 stars on the platform that you're listening to this. We hope you know you're not alone on this parenting journey and you enjoy the following episode. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam. This is another episode for the maternal mental health. So we are dropping another short episode where we brought an expert on, and we have today with us Ruth from Mama Ruth Lactation, and we will be talking about breastfeeding and going back to work and the mental aspect of that, how to prepare yourself, how to brace yourself, and how to go on this journey and keep your mental state sane. So welcome, Ruth, and thank you so much for joining us for this short episode.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here and talk about this.
You have prepared all the questions, so drop the first one.
Oh, great. Okay. So as we know, usually people are going back to work at around the 3-month mark. So when moms are breastfeeding or they're doing a collaboration of breastfeeding and pumping, can you actually let us know what are some effective strategies for maintaining like a breastfeeding or a pumping routine while we transition going back to work?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that you can do is to prepare and plan ahead. So don't wait until the week that you're going back to work for you to start pumping, but begin earlier than that. Maybe I recommend about around 8 weeks. Start offering a bit of a bottle, maybe just once a week at that point, maybe twice a week, just so that you are used to how to put together the pump, the functions of your pump specifically, and how all of that can work so that it's not new for you the first time when you're also at work trying to get back in the mental space of working and being away from your child, and also pumping is new. It's just not a recipe for any mental sanity there. So if you can do that earlier is great. Another thing you can do is to bond with your pump. So this sounds really hokey, but when you breastfeed your baby, your body is receiving all of these signals that make you feel really lovey. Your oxytocin is flowing, and that really helps your milk to flow better. And with your pump, you're not getting those love signals. So if you can do things, maybe you have a show you can watch on your phone or your computer while you're having a pump break at work, or if something that you enjoy that you can look forward to do while you're pumping. You also can look at photos of your baby, and that can help as well, especially during that really early newborn phase. Those can just bring back the feeling of what it's like to have your baby in your arms instead of your pump hooked up to you. And even having the smell of your baby, if you have a blanket that your baby's been wrapped in, bring that with you to work and just lay it on your chest so that you can smell your baby's smells as you're pumping. Those can all be things that will help your milk to flow a little smoother. Also, if you have to prepare all of your supplies. So I recommend having a bag that is your work pumping bag, and everything stays in that bag except for taking it out to clean it and store things. But have everything in there so that as you're leaving the house with baby and daycare things and everything else that's on your mind, all you have to do is grab that one bag instead of thinking through each individual piece that you need.
When we're going back to work, so these have been great tips to actually take away. And these are like check boxes really for anyone who's getting ready to do it. When we're going to go back, there is that mental shift of, I have to go back. And my mind has to now shift into being work person, not mom anymore. Is there anything that you can help us with that kind of state where we're kind of going from the coziness and the ooziness of like kind of being able to breastfeed our child to now being, now I'm a pumping work mom?
I heard someone say once, and it's really stuck with me, it's so good for our children to see us doing things that we're passionate about, that we're interested in, that are outside of the family. And so I think at that time where you're shifting, it can feel like you're moving away from time with your child. And in a time sense you are, but if you think about it long term, you're showing your child this is what it's like to be a woman who has passions for her family and also passions for a workplace or another environment, job that they're called to do, or a way that they provide for the family that is not always being together with the family. And so if you think your 3-month-old may not be understanding that fully, but if you think about the long-term effects on your child and your family, it's really a good thing for your child to see this. So I think that can help to feel like you're not being selfish, you're not running away, you're not making a bad decision to do that, even though it can feel like you're being away. You're doing something that's beneficial for your family as a whole. It's not exclusive from caring for your child. You're also caring for your child by being at work and having them in a safe space during that.
And when we talk about the transition from breastfeeding, like every feed to now actually obviously not going to be able to do that because they'll be in daycare. How is it that women can, like you already said, like bond with your pump as it were beforehand, but actually in that moment, is there a mental state? Is there something that like in your mind that's thinking, okay, you know, they're still getting the milk. They're still getting the nutrition that they need. It's just through a different mechanism. You know, I'm still providing them everything I can. Is there any way that we can help support ourselves moving forward into that?
Yeah, certainly. I think just remember that any breast milk that baby gets is beneficial. And also any feeding that baby gets is beneficial. If breastfeeding and pumping at work is not working for your mental health, that's not a good thing for your family. And so focusing more on being a mom means caring for your children in a way where they're fed and nourished. If that's breast milk, great. If it's not, also great. Do think of as a whole unit, what's best for you and your child and your whole family. And that includes your own mental health. So thinking of lots of options, you can, if you're not able to pump it during the day at work, maybe you still breastfeed at night when you put the child to bed. And that's a bonding time there. We think a lot of breastfeeding as being the baby's nutrition, and that is a really important aspect, but there's breastfeeding for nutrition, and there's also breastfeeding just for a bonding aspect of your relationship. And those are not mutually exclusive. So you can do both. Maybe baby gets a majority of their nutrition from formula when they're at daycare and you're at work. But when you put them to bed at night, you breastfeed. If you're not pumping during the day, you won't be making a lot of milk at that point, but your baby will probably still get a bit of milk at bedtime. And the point of that can be for bonding and for a time of connecting and a time of safety for your baby, rather than feeling like you have the weight of working and of also meeting every nutritional need for your baby.
Yeah, that's such an important point that you say that when we struggle with this, oh my God, like I cannot keep up with this. I cannot do the pumping. I just cannot, that we also see this other side. Okay, maybe the breastfeeding is not primarily for the nutrition because I can cover this with other things, but I still want to have the connection and then shift this perspective of the breastfeeding is a bonding time, a connection time. And if it happens, then great, without pressure. And I think this could be very beneficial and relieving to women who are like, I cannot do it all. So let me put one aspect of the breastfeeding to another sector, but I can still maintain this bonding relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these days we more think of breastfeeding as exclusively nutritional, but there really there's a whole connection aspect of that too. So I just encourage moms when they are going back to work at this point where you're not going to be exclusively with your baby breastfeeding all the time. Think outside the box of what is it that you want or don't want to be doing, what feels like too much and what feels good, and be able to, there's a way to work into that where you can do what you want to with it. And live in a day with clean water and formula that is great nutrition for our babies. And so we can use those tools as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also very important when we talk about the feeding relationship. So we really put the word relationship in highlight and say a relationship, both parties need to be happy, but we can also say, what do we want out of this relationship? And if it's bonding, then great. Then we don't have to worry and we don't have to put all this pressure on the nutrition part. And we can focus on the bonding part and really make that part of the relationship very strong and work on that. This is what I think sometimes moms forget, that the relationship needs to be working for both sides. And we don't want to be ending up in a toxic relationship where we are constantly the person who has to suffer, because we wouldn't advise this to any of our friends doing that. So I think this is really important to shift this word into the middle again. It's a relationship. How can we make it work for both parties? And what can we shift the focus to?
Yeah, certainly. Because it's a relationship, and relationships also change and evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So remember too, if you feel like you do want to continue pumping when you go to work to provide breast milk, do that. And it doesn't have to be forever. It really won't be forever, but it doesn't have to be a full year. It doesn't have to be, you can say, I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to set a goal of pumping for the first month and see how it is after that. And so you can, see it as something that will evolve and will change with that relationship, and set small goals for yourself of what feels like the right thing for you to do then, and then see after that.
Yeah, like really take it day by day and like, okay, today I'm going to try again. It works. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to try again. And maybe next week I won't. But today, this is the day where I'm going to try. Yeah. Really breaking it down to these little day by day things, taking it day by day. And if it evolves then to be accidentally being a month or a year or whatever, then great. But if it ends up being 2 days, then that's also great, because this is the goal you set for yourself. And you say, actually, I don't want to do this. This is not a great goal for me. Or amazing, I thought this was way harder, but now I think it's also what you said, preparation is key, because when you were talking of getting used to your pump and getting the relationship with this, I could picture this mom being totally sweaty in this room, like, oh God, this pump and I have to do this all now. And it's going to be a total disaster because the milk is not going to flow if we're like totally stressed out. So yeah, preparation is key there, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And remember too, and when you're preparing for that, your first few weeks back are going to be the hardest. You're going to be shifting mentally back into your workplace mode from all of the hormones and all of the, lack of routine and things like that of a newborn and yourself postpartum. So you're going to be mentally shifting a lot with work. And then when you're also shifting from breastfeeding to pumping or to formula, that's another shift. Just know the first few weeks is going to be the hardest. It's not as hard as your first week back is. It's not likely to get harder. It's more likely to get easier. You will become more accustomed to it. You'll build in your own routines and that kind of thing. Another thing you can do is if it's possible to talk with other people at your workplace who have pumped before, then you can know what worked for them, where was space that they were able to find, where was time, they may have some tips for your workplace specifically on what's helpful for finding time and space for pumping.
I do have a question. It's going off the take it day by day, but I'm just wondering, is there like an average that a woman returning to work would actually pump for?
That's a good question. I don't know an answer of how long it typically is. I think there's I would say just from my experience, there's a lot of variation in how long that is.
Yeah, it's just in my head that having been one of those mothers, when you're mothering at home, that's your job. When you go back to your job, that's another job. And pumping is actually another job. And It's the realization of saying, I can't do 3 full-time jobs simultaneously. And I would just be really interested to know if there was like an average so that people are knowing that, I'm not aiming for that 1 year. Like Maren was saying, like take it day by day, but it's a case of, what, I'm doing my best. And I don't have to set like these long timelines, but to have a realistic thing for someone to turn around and go, you know what, this is the reality is most people give up within a month after going back to work, because it is too hard for them and they have to prioritize themselves first. Because I think many people might underestimate the demand that pumping gives. Be it you're attached to a plug in a wall or you're sitting in a room on your own, shut out from everyone else, isolated, trying to do this. And it's also a case of, how's my body? Have I drank enough fluids? Have I eaten enough? How am I feeling? There's this whole checklist that you have to do just to pump. So adding that on to being a mom, being someone in work, being a partner, being a sister, brother, whatever it is, like, there's all so many different ways on top of it. I think it would just be, having a realistic look at the timeline, I think as well is quite key. So I think, Maren's approach of today I did a great day, I'm doing well. Let's see how tomorrow goes. And above all, keep hydrating, I think is always like my biggest takeaway.
Yes. Staying hydrated. Yeah. I don't know exactly how long it typically is. The reality of milk production is the more often you empty your breast, the more milk you will make. So that's for maximum milk production, but you can also think of it as, am I able to just pump once a day? Is that reasonable for me at work? And then your production probably will not be, if your baby's 3 months old, they're eating several times during your work day. So that's probably, you're not going to be making quite enough milk to meet their full nutritional demands. But again, they can get some bottles of formula and then also some breastfeeding. And that once a day would probably be enough for you to maintain a supply that could feed them when they wake up in the morning and when they go to bed at night, or feeds during the night, that kind of thing. But I think just thinking outside the box of what does feel good and reasonable for you and what doesn't, and just be realistic with moms. Or these days, at least, we're told we can be everything. that we can do everything. We can be super mom. We can work 3 full-time jobs of mom at home, working in whatever environment, and also pumping. And we can't. We're people. We have to look at what is reasonable and what's working for us, and to kind of let go of this super mom mentality where we think we can just do everything. But knowing that you are the mom for your baby, and you're the mom who's given to make the decisions for what's right for your family and your baby.
And one thing I wanted to add to this, because actually this phrase, we said it already, it's like when we give it up, I just wanted to highlight that it doesn't mean giving something up, it doesn't make you a failure. But I rather phrase it as I'm deciding to do it this way. And it's not I had to give it up. I'm a failure. I couldn't do it. Yet you don't have to do it. You don't have to suffer. And breastfeeding is not something designed to suffer through. And you just have to believe hard enough. You just have to change your mindset. Like, no, society and everything else puts boundaries and puts stuff on us and expectations. And it's not just always about your mindset. Like, you can have the greatest mindset about breastfeeding, but if your workplace doesn't have a room for it, you work in a job where you have to go to different locations, you have to take there is multiple layers of this where not about the mindset. You can be loving breastfeeding and advocating for it every single second. If the environment doesn't enable you to do it, then it's not about your mindset, and you are certainly not a failure if you decide this is just too much for me. Like, I cannot perform in any other of my multiple hats that I have to wear in multiple areas because this one topic is taking so much of my energy.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at your individual situation and see what's the priority and what do we have space for? And feeding your baby is the measure.
Yeah.
And however that happens falls underneath that. So yeah, it's not a giving up. It's a choosing of what's the best choice for your family. So, and I want to say too, for some, if you're a first time mom listening to this, some moms pump very easily at work. It is time, it is effort, certainly. It is sometimes simpler than other times. And so that's for moms who've had a complicated time pumping at work. Hearing this, you are seen and heard. It is often very difficult. And some people don't respond as well to the pump. Some people's work environments are much more challenging and less helpful for that. So that's not a failure on their part. If you've had a more simple experience with pumping at work, or if you have not pumped at work yet and are anticipating it, just hear that it could be simple and smooth, although it is an adjustment and a time factor as well. Yeah, it sometimes is a smooth transition.
And on full transparency, I think we should also let everyone know. I mean, Maren was breastfeeding. She had pretty much no issues there. For me, I was actually on the complete opposite spectrum, nearly hospitalized, severe mastitis several times, like pumping every 3 hours. Everyone's going to go through something different. So, I mean, I definitely can resonate with anyone who's going to go through some difficulties with that aspect. You just see the positives, and especially on social media, you just see all the positives. And the reality is those of us who are suffering are usually suffering in silence, and we're kind of not saying anything. And so this is why we really wanted to get you on, because we really just want to make sure that people are aware it's not a failure. And yes, you can set goals, but goals can change as well, because of the reality is it's your health and your body, your mind, and also your relationship with your child and your partner, your family, as it were. With that, Ruth, thank you so much. If you want to find out some more about Ruth is actually quite specialized with moms going back to work, helping them manage the transition through breastfeeding or pumping, or equally decreasing, whatever it might be. She's there to help support you in whatever your choice is, in whatever stage you're at as well. Be able to share her links, social media as well in the show notes. So thank you, Ruth, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.